Okay, now for chapter 8. And this has to do with things offered unto idols, meats, and so forth. Let's give just a brief intro onto what the actual issue was in Corinth. A Christian might unconsciously eat of meat, either at the house of a friend or by purchasing it himself in the public shambles, like you see right here, which had been previously brought in contact by sacrificial usage with an idol. To which brings us to the issue at hand. Verse 1. Now, as touching things offered unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth. Now, of course, charity here is love, but it's a divine love. Knowledge without such love, that is, knowledge without divine origin, is in itself no good, meaning that in that case it's temporary and ultimately worthless to our spirits. But true knowledge sent from God and by default is of love edifies the church, furthering a Christian's progress to perfection. So knowledge puffeth up, meaning that knowledge by itself, worldly knowledge like we see with atheists and so on, that can make one very proud, but charity edifieth. And if any man think that he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing, yet as he ought to know. In essence, like Cambridge commented, let us not presume to act upon our imperfect knowledge as though we were as gods, knowing good and evil. But let us give a thought to the condition of our neighbor, with whom we are conjoined by ties so close. And that's the real emphasis of this chapter 8. Paul says, you have liberty to eat such meat. Doesn't matter where it's from. Meat is meat. It doesn't matter. But remember your Jewish brethren, and any brother that may backslide by watching you eat meat that was offered unto idols. But if any man love God, the same is known of him. As concerning, therefore, the eating of those things that are offered in sacrifice unto idols, we know that an idol is nothing in the world, and that there is none other God but one. Now, though these idols are demonic, and Paul does refer to them as demons, as far as the world goes, and meats and physical things that we can see, they're just stones. They're just wood. They're just hay and stubble. They're just things that pass away. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many and lords many that people worship here and there. In India, there's 330 million or so. But to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord, Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him. Howbeit there is not in every man that knowledge. For some with conscience of the idol unto this hour eat it as a thing offered unto an idol, and their conscience being weak is defiled. And right here is a bust of what the idols in Corinth would have resembled. The Corinthian converts would have been brought up for many years to believe that such idols were truly powerful and entities to be feared. The weakness of their conscience could arise from several factors, a couple being, number one, they still had a subtle fear of the idol's wrath, or they believed it unlawful to partake of anything offered unto it, and thereby feared God's wrath. Verse 8, but meat commendeth us not to God, for neither if we eat are we the better, neither if we eat not are we the worse. But take heed, lest by any means this liberty of yours become a stumbling block to them that are weak. So meats and pork and all of this, these things are indifferent matters. They have no relation to us because just as Paul says before, how the meat passes away, the belly passes away, but the spirit lives forever, and we're of the spirit now. We walk in the spirit, and these things are of the flesh, these meats and all of that. In things indifferent, like these meats, you must look for some other guide, and you must regulate your conduct by the effect it may have on others. So this is a case-by-case basis. Your liberty to eat such things, which arises from the bare fact of the indifferent nature of the thing, may become a stumbling block to others, may be the cause of their taking a false step in the Christian course. Verse 10, for if any man see thee which hast knowledge sit at meat in the idol's temple, shall not the conscience of him which is weak be emboldened to eat those things which are offered to idols, and him thinking that it's actually an offering to the idol, thereby he is sinning against his own conscience, and then he's an open rebel, as we have discussed before, and he's actually eating it unto the idol at that point. Verse 11, and through thy knowledge shall the weak brother perish, for whom Christ died. But when ye sin so against the brethren, and wound their weak conscience, ye sin against Christ. With some irony, Paul states that yes, a weaker brother, that is, one of lesser knowledge and such Christian liberties, will begin to partake in such meats and risk falling back into such useless worship and incur the anger of God. And Paul ends the whole matter like this, wherefore, if meat make my brother to offend, if I offend my brother by eating such things, I will eat no flesh while the world standeth, lest I make my brother to offend. And a lot of people that they take that in the hyper literal sense. I don't. I believe Paul is speaking hyperbolic, and I believe at the very least, and judge your own case. Once again, this is a case by case basis. Perhaps all of you know that you have liberty to eat pork or whatever, but Paul knew that there were Jews around them, and they refused to partake in certain meats. And then there are these Gentiles in whom saw these meats that were offered unto idols in the marketplace, and Christians buying them up and eating them. So those are really the ones that Paul is pointing to, but this goes throughout the whole spectrum. Anyway, to conclude, at the very least, if you know that a brother is offended by you eating pork or something of that nature, these things of the world, indifferent and so on, then don't eat pork around him. Eat it at home, never speak of it. Let it be a thing that does not exist to him. And I believe that that's really what Paul is meaning in the hyperbolic sense right here. Or you can go to the furthest extent, take this in the hyper literal, and say, I'll just never eat pork again. And either way, I believe it's fine. But just to bring to your memory one last note, it is noticeable that St. Paul, in discussing this question, makes no reference whatever to the decision of the council at Jerusalem mentioned in Acts 15, that the Christians, they said, should abstain from, and I quote, meats offered to idols, and from things strangled, and from blood. So it was their judgment that they should never eat meat offered unto idols. And though Paul makes no mention of that, he still does conclude in a roundabout way the same as the church in Jerusalem by still ordering that none should eat meat offered to idols if there be even the slightest risk. If there's even the slightest risk of causing another to backslide, don't even partake.